Welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you're a Canadian sound recording pro, a label exec, or an independent producer, expanding your reach beyond domestic borders, well, that's the ultimate dream, right? But how exactly do you crack one of the most lucrative yet honestly complex regions on the planet? Today, we are unpacking a comprehensive government study to hand you a highly actionable playbook for exporting your music to Europe. Let's get into it. Let's kick things off with a truly massive number just to put this all into perspective. 2.4 billion US dollars. Now that was the total market value of Germany's sound recording industry alone back in 1991. When you add in the UK, France, and Spain, you are looking at an absolute commercial powerhouse. This is exactly why the European market is the ultimate prize for international expansion. But, as you might guess, a prize this big comes with some serious complexities. To navigate those complexities, we're not just guessing here. This whole explainer is derived directly from a highly detailed government trade document, jointly commissioned by External Affairs and International Trade Canada and Communications Canada. Think of it as a strategic manual for demystifying the shifting, somewhat chaotic landscape of the European community. As trade barriers fall and the single market emerges, the rules of the game are literally changing overnight. And this study, it's your roadmap. So, here is our playbook for today. We'll map out the European music landscape, meet the major players, navigate the new single market rules, break down your entry strategies, and finally, locate the financial support to actually make it happen. All right, Section 1, the European music landscape. Let's take a macro view of the market. You know, a really common mistake exporters make is treating Europe as just this single monolithic entity. But as we'll see, the cultural and economic differences between countries require some highly tailored strategies. The sheer scale of the top three territories is truly staggering. Germany leads the pack at an incredible $2.4 billion, followed closely by the UK at roughly $2.1 billion, and France at almost $1.7 billion. Then there's Spain. While smaller, it represents a vital and highly unique market at $589 million. But here's the thing. It's not just about the total cash value. It's really about how consumers actually buy their music. We're seeing some really sharp contrasts in how people consume audio across these borders, which proves that a one-size-fits-all approach simply won't work. France absolutely dominates in CD volume at 63%. They were eager early adopters. Meanwhile, Spain sits at just 25%, remaining fiercely loyal to the good old analog cassette tape. If you're planning a physical manufacturing run, these local quirks absolutely dictate your entire strategy. Which brings us to Section 2. Meet the major players. It is time to meet the gatekeepers. If you want your sound to actually reach European ears, you have to know who controls access to the distribution channels. These are the 6 massive multinational corporations that heavily dominate the European music landscape: BMG, EMI, MCA, Polygram, Sony, and Warner. And they are fully vertically integrated. What does that mean? Well, it means they own the whole shebang. The record labels, the music publishers, the manufacturing plants, and the distribution networks all over the world. Now wrap your head around this. Between them, these 6 companies account for an overwhelming 65 to 75% of all record sales in each European country. I mean, that is a staggering concentration of power. They are the ultimate gatekeepers, completely dictating the flow of international repertoire into domestic European markets. Furthermore, as trade barriers fall across the European community, these majors are centralizing their operations. Instead of dealing with separate licensing in Germany, France, and the UK, companies like Polygram and Sony are creating one-stop clearance and payment points for mechanical rights. And mechanical rights are essentially just the royalties paid every time a physical copy of your song is made. By centralizing distribution into these massive pan-European operations, they are aggressively cutting costs. It makes them highly efficient, for sure, but also infinitely more formidable. This corporate centralization is happening for a very specific reason. Welcome to Section 3, the Single Market Rules, where we'll navigate the shifting laws of this newly emerging arena. Managing international rights means navigating a heavily fragmented map of national copyright laws. It's kind of a giant puzzle. For instance, author protection lasts for 70 years in France and Germany, but only 50 years in the UK. Or take the blank tape levy, which is a fee collected to compensate artists for home copying. It's heavily enforced in France and Germany, but completely absent in the UK and Spain. The European community is actively trying to harmonize these chaotic discrepancies into one cohesive rulebook, basically pushing standards up to the highest level, like harmonizing that author protection to 70 years across the board. With the landscape mapped out and the legal parameters set, we move to Section 4, Strategies for Market Entry. It's time to put theory into practice. For a Canadian independent label, producer, or artist, the big question is pretty obvious. How do you possibly break in when the big six multinationals hold all the cards? You can't exactly just pack a suitcase full of CDs, fly over, and hope for the best. You need a highly targeted strategy. There are three main tactical paths outlined in the source material. First up, importing physical products. Now, this is mostly for highly niche markets, like providing specialized dance records directly to European club DJs, where the margins are tight but the demand is highly specific. Second, licensing deals. This is the most common route, where you partner with a European label to secure an advance and utilize their promotional muscle. And third, joint ventures, where you actually set up a shared company in the target country to split both the operations and the financial risk. Let's look a bit closer at that licensing path. When choosing a partner, you have to weigh your options very carefully. Partnering with a major label gives you vast pan-European distribution power and potentially huge financial advances. But there is a very high risk of a smaller Canadian artist getting completely lost in their massive roster. On the flip side, partnering with European independent label gives you specialized, personalized flexibility. They react faster and know the local club scenes intimately, but they just simply lack the sheer financial war chest of the majors. You've got to choose your trade-offs wisely. Now, here's a rather harsh reality check when looking to cross the pond. The study notes that majors often require massive domestic Canadian success, specifically a platinum record, which is 100,000 units sold before they will even return your call for international distribution. A prime example from the text is Celine Dion. It actually wasn't until she began recording in English, absolutely dominated domestically, and proved undeniable commercial viability that Sony Canada greenlit a massive international push. Essentially, you have to conquer home before the majors will let you conquer abroad. But conquering abroad takes serious capital. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Finding Financial Support. Let's talk about funding your expansion without completely bankrupting your label.
Fortunately, you don't have to empty your own pockets entirely. There's a concrete checklist of Canadian government-backed schemes designed specifically to absorb the shock of international expansion. The Sound Recording Development Program directly helps fund your overseas touring. The Program for Export Market Development provides loans to de-risk foreign market penetration, and the Export Development Corporation offers vital export insurance. Look, leveraging these financial tools is literally just as critical to your success as writing a hit song.
As the European market consolidates and those old regulatory walls tumble down, the opportunities for prepared Canadian artists and labels are completely unprecedented. But success requires a highly tactical approach, the right local partners, and a firm grasp of the legal and financial tools waiting to be utilized. So, as you formulate your own global expert strategy, I'm going to leave you with this thought. The market is waiting, but are you positioned to make the move? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and we'll see you next time.